Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out something that's really quite interesting because it's a brand new style of figure, or at least to my knowledge anyway. It's brand new to me for sure, from Takara Tomy, because we've got larger figures now that are going to be released from them, and they're almost kind of like Mattel Jurassic World style, similar, very similar in size. Not so much as far as quality goes, but similar in size and style. And you can see we're going to begin these reviews. So far, there's only two out that I have, which is the T-Rex and the Triceratops. And we're going to begin with the Triceratops, but I think it looks pretty cool, honestly. Like, definitely an interesting take on a Takara Tomy figure. Very interesting that Takara Tomy would kind of create something like this, had a different route compared to the much smaller figures that they usually have out. And I'm actually really excited about this because I think Takara Tomy has a lot of potential when it comes to this style figure. I don't know that they've really utilized it here on this first run, but I think they still have a lot of potential to create some really cool stuff. But you can see as far as the box art goes, the majority of it I cannot read, but we do have a Takara Tomy logo up there. We've got a nice shot here of the figure, and then of course the figure itself right here because it's in a very nice big open area. If we turn the box around, you can see some more images here on the back. You can also actually see kind of like a sneak peek shot here of the smaller versions of these figures that are out, the more classic Takara Tomy style. And then again, the figure over here with lots more information that, as I said, I cannot read, unfortunately. But it's a very similar style as far as the box goes to a Mattel Jurassic World figure, just like the figure itself kind of is. So, let's pop it out of the box and check it out. So here is our Triceratops, and I will say, out of the packaging, it looks okay, but I feel like it somehow looked better in the packaging. There's two things, though, straight away that I'm picking up on when it comes to this style figure that I'm not a big fan of, and that one thing right away is the fact that the detail doesn't look as great as it probably should. It's kind of muted overall. There's a lot of fine detail to it, but it's somehow been kind of smoothed out to where you can't pick it up that nicely, and it's not super vibrant, but you can make it out, especially when you let the light kind of shine on it. You can see it is a really highly detailed sculpt, but the actual sculpt just doesn't shine the way it probably should. The other thing that I noticed right away is that we have screw holes. So we have like Hasbro flashbacks here with the screw holes on the side. And I kind of didn't expect that, even though Takara Tomy often has like kind of ugly ball joints, which we actually still somehow have. Not really a ball joint, but you can very clearly see the spot for the articulation there on the tail. But they normally have kind of obnoxious seams and ball joints and things like that on their figures, but for some reason I didn't expect the screw hole thing. I thought maybe they would be smart enough to kind of evade that and not have the screw holes. But it still looks pretty cool, I guess, so let's jump to a closer look at this Triceratops right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Triceratops, you can see it looks okay, and almost actually has a very similar look to the Mattel Triceratops, which is very interesting. It actually really looks like the Mattel Triceratops, if you ask me. But at the same time, again, you can see the detail doesn't look that phenomenal on it. Kind of washed out for the most part. As you look through it, let the light hit it, you can see there was definitely a lot of detail on the sculpt initially, but then something happened here where they've kind of like smoothed all the skin texture out to the point where it just doesn't shine the way I feel like it should. You can see we do have some decent paint work on the figure, though. We've got some painted eyes there with a black and a white pupil, or maybe just a white spot to kind of give it that eye shine. You can see that we have the horns painted here with kind of like a nice off-white. They look okay. Again, you can definitely see some detail within them, but just like with the skin texture, it's a little bit kind of muted as far as the detail goes. We don't have any paintwork for the beak, but the beak does have some okay looking sculpt and detail. We do, however, have an articulated jaw, but it might be the worst articulated jaw I've ever seen on a Triceratops. It just looks super awkward. You can see the tongue sculpted out there on the inside of the mouth, which is nice to see, painted with a nice pinkish tone. But the jaw just, I mean, I guess it's not terrible, but it's definitely by no means great, that's for sure. It's just something, it's iffy. But as you move up into the frill of the Triceratops, I actually really like the coloration that we have up here. As you can see, we have some black tones that start there in the horns, and they kind of stripe back to the outer edge of the frill, and then you have variations of reds and yellows there up in the frill. I will say the paintwork doesn't look that great as far as the application. It almost looks like it's been printed and then applied from there, because it almost looks like pixelated a little bit. Like, it looks very weird. Definitely doesn't look smooth or natural, but it is a really cool design, almost looking like a sunset there in the frill of the Triceratops. So even though the actual application of the paint looks a little questionable, I think the overall design does look really cool, and you can see from the front there, definitely really flashy. Maybe in a naturalistic way, maybe not so much. I'm not entirely sure how I would kind of perceive it, but I think it looks cool, that's for sure. And you can see all the little spikes here running along the outer edge of the frill are all painted as well, but I think I noticed that they were not painted on the back. Yes, so you can see they're not painted here on the back of the frill, which is a bit of a downside. There is articulation here in the neck. You can kind of see it wobble all over the place, and I think that might have to do with the action feature. We have a button up here on the top, which is a super obvious button. They did not even attempt to hide it. And if you push it, yes. So we have actually a similar action feature to what a Mattel Triceratops would have, with the kind of head rearing up sort of action feature. As you move back into the body, though, you can see skin wrinkles and stuff galore all over the place. You've got some nicely sculpted legs, as you've got the elbows sculpted out there. You got some nice creasing in the joint of the elbow. And again, you can really see how muted the detail looks in the foot here. Like, no nail paint, first of all, but you can barely even make out where the toes would be or any of the skin texture. It actually has a very strong feeling similar to like the Batat, the Terabyte Batat kind of like light and sound dinosaurs they had, where they look kind of cool, but at the same time were just muted beyond belief when it comes to the detail. And I think that foot sculpt right there is a prime example of that. As you move through, you do have a pretty cool kind of design here running along the back, as you have a nice black tone running down the center of the spinal column and then striping down along the side of the figure. It seems as though my camera for some reason does not like this figure. I don't know what it is about it, but it's like freaking out because of the colors or something. But you can see as we lead down, we have that black tone lead all the way out onto the tail, and then as you lead down here into the rear leg, you can see again muscle definition and everything in the thigh and calf moving down. But again, it just doesn't look very good, I would say, as far as the actual sculpt and detail goes. There's not really a whole lot of difference you're going to see over here on this side, except for the fact that, again, the figure here on this side has screw holes everywhere. The tail's also a bit too short, I would say, for a Triceratops, so that's a little bit iffy as well. So I would definitely say it's by no means one of the best Takara Tomy figures I've seen, but it's kind of cool that they're reaching out and starting to create something a little bit different. I could definitely get on board with these, but they really need to put a bit more effort into them. As far as the rest of the articulation goes, we already saw the articulated jaw, which looks very strange. You also already saw the action feature as well as the articulation in the neck, but we do have articulation in the legs. It can only go forward here. Not very much going on as far as mobility goes. It's actually very limited. You can only move up one, and that's it. For the rear leg, we can't go forward at all, but we can go back, but again, only back by one kind of little jerky movement, and then that's it. I'd imagine the same can be said for the opposing legs, and you also have the articulation of the tail, which can move left and right. And we'll just give it a shot. Yep, definitely the same going on over here. Just one jerky movement for the legs, but definitely not the greatest figure in general. Like, none of this, I would say, is stellar, because we don't have great paint apps, we don't have great detail, we don't have great articulation, and the design looks okay. I guess we can give it that. The paint scheme, as far as the actual design goes, looks pretty cool, so they at least have something going for them. As far as a size goes, when it comes to a length on this Triceratops, you are looking at about the 9.5 inch range, or around 24 centimeters. As far as a height goes, about 5 inches, or around 12.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Takara Tomy larger version of the Triceratops. And you can see it's got some decent size to it, and it's actually kind of similar, I think, in size to a Mattel Triceratops. So if you are familiar with the Mattel Triceratops, you're going to be pretty familiar with the size of this Takara Tomy version. And then for another comparison, we have the randoms with the Schleich Diabloceratops, Safari LTDU Tyrannus, and Collect Day Deluxe Dimetrodon, stepping in next to our Triceratops. And then another comparison here with a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus next to the Triceratops to continue to give you an idea of this size. Maybe this is actually a little smaller, I think, than a Mattel Triceratops. And to show you that, there is a Mattel Triceratops next to the Takara Tomy version. And the Takara Tomy version is actually a little taller, but more compact, like the Mattel version. If I move this out a little bit, you can see the Mattel version is definitely a bit longer than what we see for the Takara Tomy version. It is very unfortunate that these Takara Tomy versions are a bit lackluster overall, because like they look really cool. They definitely could have been really neat companion pieces to the Mattel line, but they just don't meet the same quality for sure of what a Mattel figure has compared to this Takara Tomy version. But you can see, looking at those head sculpts, like they look so similar. If I didn't know that Takara Tomy already bases a lot of their figures off of the Mattel figures, I would almost think that this was bootlegged from the Mattel Triceratops, because the face is so similar. Like, if we actually bring them over here and look at the two together, you can see the nostrils look similar, the beaks look very similar, the detail there around the eye almost looks similar. Even right here on the side of the face, there's like two little kind of small spikes. We have the same thing on the Takara Tomy version. So again, they look very, very similar. The frill and everything, though, you can see definitely looks, it's going to make a noise now. I lifted its head up, but you can see the frill definitely looks a bit different. The placement and direction of the horns looks a bit different. So there are differences, but oh boy, that Triceratops doesn't stop. I feel like they are very similar though overall, and there's definitely a good chance that Takara Tomy based their Triceratops on the Mattel version. So this brand new Takara Tomy larger version of the Triceratops, I don't really know how to term these quite yet, is interesting. It's definitely not a great figure and not even close to as nice as I kind of thought it would be. Coming into this, I kind of thought it would be a decent looking figure, and this was thanks to Dino Mike Mac, who actually acquired this for me, so a massive thank you goes out to him. But when he had originally sent me the images of this, I don't know if I was just so focused and blinded by the fact that Takara Tomy had a new line of dinosaur figures out that were larger and similar to the Mattel figures that I was like, wow, I really need to have that. So I asked them to pick it up right away for me. But having it here in person, it's definitely not that great of a figure. The sculpt is really washed out as far as the detail goes. And it's really sad because when you look at the figure, again, you kind of let the light hit it and shine some light on it. You can see the details there. It's just really, really muted. And that, I would imagine, means that the original sculpt, again, was actually really well done, but then something happened when it comes to actually producing this figure that it turned out pretty poor as far as the actual detail goes. Overall, the sculpt is not so great as far as the fine detail. The general appearance is okay for it. I think it looks kind of childish, mostly in the legs, but it looks okay. The tail is also a bit too short, so I really don't quite like the tail. But the fine detail and the general appearance don't look that great, but the appearance of the Triceratops as a whole, like when you take a step back and look at it from afar, I think it looks all right. It's just that it could have definitely been better. The paint scheme is pretty neat, even though there's not really a whole lot going on as far as paint application on the figure. I would say somehow even lazier than the Mattel paint apps, because even though we've got some pretty cool color up there in the frill and a striping moving down the back, that's about it. But again, the paint scheme's kind of cool. It just would have been better if there was more put to it, and the figure overall wasn't so lazily painted. The actual articulation as well isn't really that great. The articulation is very jerky, doesn't have much mobility to it, so there's not much as far as a range of movement goes. There is an action feature for it. I don't like the button up there on the top. That as well makes it look very much so like a very cheap toy. Gives it that massive eyesore on the back of the figure, and they didn't even bother painting it black, where it's like right there in the black areas. They could have given it a black coloration to sort of try to hide it a little bit, but they really didn't even try that at all. And on top of that, you also have screw holes on the other side, which is equally as ugly as that button on the back. So even though it's interesting to see Takara Tomy going a new path with their figures, creating something a little bit different, which I absolutely commend them for, This definitely is not a great figure, and I really hope to see more improvement on this line as time goes on. If you are interested in grabbing one, though, I have absolutely no idea where you can get one. I guess at this point we just kind of have to keep our fingers crossed that these figures start to show up on AliExpress, because normally AliExpress gets most things over time. When they first come out, not all the time, they don't always get them right away, but when Takara Tomy figures, like, over the next few months, they tend to start to appear on there. So hopefully it'll start to appear on there. If I do end up seeing them, I will update the description with a link to one. Regardless, let me know in the comments section what you guys think, and also like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.